Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where we seem to have a bit of a theme on the channel at the moment. Well, two themes really. One theme is trying to figure out how to solve certain problems for Ten Hag, because there's a lot of them at the moment. But the other theme in the last 7 or 8 days or so is the 4-4-2 diamond. Now the reason this has developed is because last week I was talking about, could United set up in that shape? The kind of verdict in that video was probably not quite, although maybe it could work. And then, kind of unexpectedly, we saw Manchester United in the 4-4-2 diamond at the weekend against Brighton. But it didn't go too well, did it? However, Ten Hag actually seems to think that it didn't go too bad, saying that for the first 20 minutes the system worked perfectly. And the fact that he said that makes me think that he might stick with the 4-4-2 diamond moving forward. However, I think we've all seen it doesn't quite work. So what I want to do today is try and tweak his 4-4-2 diamond. Now, to make one thing very clear, it's not the shape that I would be going with. This is not me recommending the 4-4-2 diamond. Absolutely not. But I think if Ten Hag is going to try and stick with it, rather than sitting here going, it doesn't work, let's try and figure out a way that it can work, particularly from a defensive point of view. But before we get into that, I need a massive favour from you guys. I have set up a Macmillan Cancer Support Just Giving page. The link will be in the description down below. We're currently on £243 worth of donations, which is absolutely incredible. Can we hit £250 by this weekend? That is my aim. £7, that's all we need. Could you be the person to donate £7 and get us to that £250 mark? If you're the person, if you are the man for the job, then use the link in the description down below. It really would mean a lot to me, so if you could do that, it would be amazing. But let's get into fixing the 4-4-2 diamond. And we'll start with in possession, where initially we will be slightly repeating what we were talking about last week, but as we go into it, you will see a few different things we're talking about. Now, the first thing I think we need to address is the personnel. Now, we're not talking about necessarily United using the diamond against Bayern or even against Burnley or even Crystal Palace. If United want to use this shape in the long term, if there are Sancho and Antony issues, the personnel needs to change in the team, particularly for defensive reasons. So, why is there a big problem with the personnel from a defensive point of view? I'll make it quite clear really. There's a combination of players which don't work hard enough and physically don't move enough. So we might need to pull some of them out of the team. Now, the reason for this is because in modern day football, what we very often see is man-to-man presses, but more importantly, we see ball-playing goalkeepers. Which means that when the opposition have the ball, if they use a ball-playing goalkeeper, they have 11 players which can affect the ball. The goalkeeper, the 4 defenders, the 3 midfielders, the 3 attackers, or whatever the formation is. These days, with ball-playing goalkeepers, there are 11 players involved in possession. Now, as a defensive team, you're instantly down to 10 players which can affect the ball because your goalkeeper is never going to come out and tackle someone or be part of a high press. That's not really what they do. So instantly, it's 11 versus 10. If you then add in the fact that Marcus Rashford doesn't work hard enough, it's now 11 versus 9 out of possession for United. Combine that with the fact that Christian Eriksen has no intensity to his duels and just isn't mobile enough, it's now 11 versus 8. A big concern, and then also Casemiro, who loses every 1 versus 1 battle he goes into and also doesn't cover the ground. United are almost 11 versus 7 out of possession at times. That's a problem. That's why the team is being played through so easily. So could we see some changes to the system when players are returning from injury? So what do we need to bring into the team? We need to bring into the team energy, dual winning ability, but energy, legs in the middle of the park. So for now, we're going to take Casemiro out. Now, again, Casemiro will still get plenty of game time this season, don't worry, he's still a very, very good footballer. But let's just see if we can come up with something here. Don't hate me for it, let's just see if we can cook something. We're also going to take Christian Eriksen out. I think Eriksen's been really good at the start of the season. In possession, he's been phenomenal. But off the ball, he's just lacking. He's really lacking the legs. So let's bring Mason Mount in when he's back from injury. And also, we're going to bring Raphael Varane in for Victor Lindelof. Now, we could also talk about perhaps Luke Shaw coming in at left back, although that seems like a slightly longer term injury, so we won't talk about that for now. We're going to keep Rashford in the team. Now, Rashford is of course getting a lot of hate at the moment. But if we take Rashford out of the team, who are you replacing him with? Martial? Well, initially, he doesn't really do that much defensive work either. But also, if you take Rashford out of this team, and people are talking about Bruno Fernandes being dropped as well, because they don't think he's good enough. If you take Rashford and Bruno Fernandes out of this team, I understand it, right? They're frustrating at times. But who on earth is going to create a single chance in this football club if you take those two out? It is ludicrous to suggest that they should be dropped. Maybe rotated in certain games, yes. But to drop those two out of the team, enjoy losing a lot of football matches this season without goals. Because Without those two, there is no creativity, there is no spark, so they have to stay in the team. So before we discuss how to fix the problem, we first need to identify what the problem was. Now, to some of you this might be quite obvious, some of you might be new to the channel though, or you might be new to this sort of content. Basically, the problem when you defend with the 4-4-2 diamond in a natural kind of concept is that you lack wide players. So if the opposition use a wide winger but also a high wide fullback, it gives your midfielder so much ground to cover. Because the second this ball goes out here, your central midfielder has to cover this player here, but then if the ball goes inside, they've also got a problem like that. This was the big problem for Manchester United. That Eriksen was being forced to cover too much room, and we know he can't do that. McTominay was forced to cover too much room. Marcus Rashford was lazy in terms of if the ball went backwards like this, he didn't apply any pressure to the ball, so he was lazy in that aspect. And any time the United midfield was beaten, Casemiro and Eriksen didn't have the legs to cover it. So we need solutions. One solution is again to change the personnel and bring those new players into the team. Sofian Amrabat really struggling with English today. Amrabat compared to Casemiro, you get so much more energy, you get so much more mobility. He's not the fastest player in the world, by the way. People keep commenting that. Amrabat isn't that fast, he's not going to solve the problem. It's about mobility rather than speed. Big differences. It's about the way you turn and things like that. Amrabat is miles better than Casemiro in that aspect. Elite? No, but certainly an upgrade. But Mason Mount is the important player here, because compared to Christian Eriksen, he covers so much more ground. However, in my opinion, it is still not ideal to ask even Mason Mount and even Scott McTominay, two really athletic players. It's still not ideal and optimal to ask them to cover these wide areas when you're still playing a 4-4-2 diamond. So in my opinion, United need to stop with the 4-4-2 diamond out of possession. Now, that might sound odd because we're not fixing the diamond there, we're not tweaking it, we're just abandoning it. But no, we are just tweaking it, don't worry. What we're going to do, from a defensive point of view, out of possession, is first of all, ask the team not to engage the ball as high up the pitch. Ten Hag cannot coach a good pressing structure at the moment. He simply, at this moment in time, doesn't seem to be a good enough manager, or he doesn't trust his squad enough to do it. So stop trying to do it, Eric. Just give up. It's not going to happen. Stop doing it. Instead, be in more of an aggressive mid-block. I've said this time and time again. But you can do it with your diamond. Just move players about a little bit. You can still have your diamond in possession if that's what you want to do, these four central midfielders. But out of possession, can we move to more of a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-2? Now, the inspiration for this is partly Real Madrid. They play in a 4-4-2 diamond and play four really good athletic midfielders. We'll see Jude Bellingham, for example, will often drop into a 4-4-2 and defend out wide. Valverde is sometimes asked to do the same. Even Toni Kroos does it sometimes in a left midfield position. If United are aggro and really intense and aggressive in this shape, in the 4-2-2 or the 4-4-2, I think it unlocks new potential and new options for this United team. Now, importantly, in Bruno Fernandes, Scott McTominay, Amrabat and Mason Mount, you've got four players there who are going to cover a lot of ground. But not only are they going to cover a lot of ground, they're going to do it with an intensity to the way that they play. So that's really, really important. Amrabat and McTominay also both suit playing in a double pivot from a defensive point of view. So again, that actually works quite well. Bruno Fernandes isn't as central, which means his pressing game not being refined isn't as much of a problem. And we've also got the ground coverage of Mason Mount, which we need. We're also not putting as much emphasis on Marcus Rashford. We're covering for him a little bit more. Now, basically the aim here from a defensive point of view is you're not going super high up the pitch. Instead, you're trying to force the ball one way. How do you force the ball one way? Basically, you ask one striker to press a little bit higher, the other one to sit a little bit deeper, and you're always going to invite this pass to the fullback. So whereas at the weekend, this was the very problem, the ball going to the fullback, what we're now going to ask is actually that's what we're going to try and force to happen. Because in the 4-4-2, it's much easier to deal with. Mason Mount can shift across, Amrabat can come across, Scott McTominay, the other player in a double pivot, can come across. Basically, we are shuttling our whole team across the pitch. So Bruno Fernandes, even the far-sided midfielder, is going to come nice and narrow. When you are on the ball, it's a basic principle of football. When you are on the ball, you make the pitch as big as possible, you expand. When you are off the ball, you want to squeeze and come nice and compact. You can do that in a 4-4-2 really nicely, because that flat four in midfield can get a lot closer to each other. That's what we need to see, a flat four out of possession, in my opinion. Because I think it allows United to get over to one side of the pitch like this and make it much more difficult. Also, when you force the ball wide, you use the touchline as a defender. If I'm in the middle of the pitch here, there's a 360-degree angle in which you've got to defend. You've got to cover every single angle. When the ball is out wide, though, 180 degrees or 50% of the work is done for you by the touchline. The touchline is the best defender in football because you can't beat it. You can't beat a touchline. You can't dribble past the touchline. So use the touchline as one of your defenders. And now with Mason Mount kind of shuttling into this position with much more efficiency than Christian Eriksen, you're making it so much more difficult for the opposition to progress the ball forward. Because rather than going 2 versus 1 against Reguilon now only has one player to deal with. He's now just dealing with the winger. He's now doing the normal job of a fullback. It's so much better for him. Something which would be important here, though, is that if the ball is played backwards, or actually not even if the ball is played backwards, the strikers need to do a better job of making sure the opposition don't go backwards. Now that might sound a little bit odd, but actually one of the most effective passes in football is a really underrated pass. It's a set-off backwards pass. Now what we talk about all the time, everywhere, you see it everywhere, is progressive passes. Passes through the lines. But actually, in my opinion, the pass more important than the progressive pass itself is the set-off backwards pass which comes after it. And this is what teams like Brighton, for example, are good at. They work the ball wide. So let's say Rashford's got is pressing the ball here. The ball goes wide. You think you've done your job. But what Brighton do really well after this, for example, is play the ball in here, and then they play a little set pass for this player to move on to. This is when Rashford just wasn't switching on and was horrendous in his performance from this aspect. So he has to improve at that. If he can't get better from the defensive side of the game, the solution is to not play him. So he has to. There's no excuse for it. He has to get better at this. But actually, just stop the pass going backwards initially. Just make a better job of cutting that passing lane. I'm not even asking him to press with intensity. Just cut the lane. That is something that he can do. Now in midfield, we are man for man with the two here. It allows United, again, to use that touchline as your defender, squeeze across. And there's actually no obvious weakness when using this shape. From a defensive point of view, there is no major weakness. The wingers are in 1 versus 1 situations against fullbacks, which is, the best you can ask for, really. The striker is in a 2 versus 1 situation. There is no spare midfielder. The only real spare player in this system is the goalkeeper and the far side fullback. But because the pressure is so good, it's so difficult to switch this ball. Now, yes, the ball might eventually go backwards, but 9 times out of 10, if it then gets switched to the other side, you should have the time to shuttle across. And again, this is why we are going for energetic, intense players in the middle of the park. And again, get that ball wide, use the touchline as your defender. Because I tell you what, unlike certain United players, the touchline isn't just going to abandon the ball and give up on the defensive side of the game. Use that touchline as your defender. Give him a bigger contract if you have to keep him at the club. Use the touchline as your defender. Force the ball wide. That is what you can do with this shape. Now, again, at the weekend against Brighton, the issue was when the ball went wide, United were weak. With this tweak to the 4-4-2 or the 4-2-2 out of possession, which is still really close to Ten Hag's diamond, it is now our strength defending the wide area. And that's important. But simply, the second the ball is won, or when United are back in possession, all it takes is Mason Mount to move kind of a bit more central, Bruno Fernandes to move a little bit higher, and we are back in our 4-4-2 diamond shape. So we haven't abandoned the 4-4-2 diamond, we have just tweaked it, and that's what Ten Hag should do moving forward. Now again, do I think this shape is perfect? No. Would I use the 4-4-2 diamond moving forward? Probably not. But again, based on what we saw Erik ten Hag saying right at the start of the video, I've got a feeling he might stick with it and just try and tweak it a little bit. In my opinion, these are the tweaks which need to be made, and this is the best hope of using the 4-4-2 diamond. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hopefully this is the last time we kind of come up with theories behind this shape, because I'm kind of a bit bored of talking about it. But it's also always interesting to come up with different solutions. So let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. And also, before you leave, use that link in the description down below to check out the Just Giving page for Macmillan Cancer Support. It's a hugely important charity. If you could make that £7 donation to get us to £250 by the end of the week, I would be so grateful. I really can't put it into words. But I think apart from that, for today's video, I think we're finished. We have taken the 4-4-2 diamond. We haven't completely abandoned it because I think Ten Hag will stick with it. We've changed some certain personnel. We've changed the philosophy behind it. Rather than our weaknesses are now our strengths and vice versa. So I think this works for United. Is it optimal? No, but I think it works. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But apart from that, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.